One of my favorite songs that we sang was Let There Be Peace on Earth. Sorry, I get a little emotional. And let it begin with me. And that's really the message.
And welcome to All Peacemakers Needed video series. Today we have an incredible guest to learn from. Her name is Tami Pyfer, and I'm excited to jump right into it. Tammy, we will get to all of your accomplishments and all the neat change that you're making. But first, let's hear about you as a person, interests, hobbies, family. Let's hear about you.
Well, thank you first for having me here. I'm really excited to visit with you. I mean, who would not want to be on a podcast about peacemakers needed? All peacemakers needed. This is really a worthy, valiant, and much needed effort. So thank you for having me. I am Tami Pyfer. I am a mom, grandma. I spent the evening last night on Mother's Day with 9 of my 16 grandchildren that all live within a couple of hours of us here in Salt Lake City. I have a lot of different interests. Music has been a big interest of mine for many years. We have 5 children who are all very musical, and we've sung together for years. When I met my husband, we started singing together, and that's been something that has really tied in a lot of our life experiences together, both as a couple and as a family. I also am a political junkie. It's not really a hobby. I just can't avoid it. I served in public office for 12 years, 8 years on the Logan City Council in Logan, Utah, and 4 years for the State Board of Education, followed by 7 years in the governor's office as Governor Gary Herbert's education policy advisor. So
Wow.
that's where the politics stuff just comes in. And I have this kind of combination of education and politics. I taught at Utah State University for 10 years. So I'm a wife, a mom, a grandma, a community member, someone who is really passionate about getting other people involved in their communities, involved in changing the world.
So on that note, you have these goals and this beautiful family and a rich life. And one of the things that you're well known for now is the Dignity Index. And so for anyone who's listening that is unfamiliar with that, could you describe it for us?
Sure. The Dignity Index is a scale that goes, actually, I will show you. It's a scale that goes from 1 to 8. And this is it. It measures the language that we use when we are in conflict, when we disagree with someone, maybe when we're angry or when we're hurt. And the scale goes from the bottom of the scale, which is contempt, to the top of the scale, which is dignity. We often find it's human nature when we're faced with disagreement or conflict to find someone to blame. It's been called scapegoating over the centuries, right? And that's contempt. And that starts you into the bottom parts of the scales when you start to have to find someone to blame and call them names and talk about how evil they are and how they're ruining everything. That's contempt. The top part of the scale is dignity. And this is when we start to see ourselves not as better than someone else, but we see the common humanity that we have with each other among us in conflict. And so, what this scale does is it teaches us language that reflects mindsets that we have in these moments of conflict. For example, a 4, again, the first step into dignity is, or into contempt, is when you say, we're better than those people. They don't really belong. They're not one of us. You drop down to a 3, and it's, we're the good people and they're the bad people. At a 2, you're saying they're going to ruin everything. They're evil. They're ruining everything I care about. And at a 1, unfortunately, we do see this in society, in our culture, in politics today, is when you start to dehumanize people. They're not even human, so it's our moral duty to destroy them because they're going to destroy us. That's the language of genocide, but it's also the language of political violence. I don't like that side of the scale. Sometimes I visit it. I try not to live there. But on the dignity side of the scale is when you can say at a 5, the other side has a right to be here and they have a right to be heard. I'm going to listen. 6 is you're going to do more than listen. You're going to try to find common ground together. The mindset is we always talk to the other side because we're going to find these values and interests that we share. 7 is when you're going to talk about the stuff you don't have in common, the goals that you don't agree on, but you want to learn more. You want to find out why Bonnie Bingham thinks so differently than Tami Pyfer. And when you get to that level, you start to find that you might have been wrong, or you maybe see things differently after you've learned someone's experiences. And an eight, the top of the scale, is when you can say, look, everyone is born with inherent worth, and so we treat everyone with dignity, no matter what. So this scale is used we designed it to score politics in our pilot project. And we quickly learned when we scored the speech, we don't score people, but we score speech. When we started scoring the speech of politicians running for federal office, we found people didn't care so much about that, but they really wanted to score themselves. And that's been the big aha moment for us, is that this scale, when applied to our own language and our own mindset, helps us become peacemakers.
That is so powerful. And just having that visual and the description, I know as I've looked through it and studied it, it's helped me put into words what I was already kind of feeling. And I'll
Yeah,
tell you what, that jump between 6 and 7, when you have to have introspection, I was like, ooh, that's rough. That can be a hard leap to,
yeah.
you know, be accepting and like, okay, we can have different ideas, but maybe I'm wrong.
But so the set at a seven, yeah, some of the keywords we use for that are curiosity, humility, vulnerability. I might be wrong. And that can be a really scary place to be, especially think of these moments of maybe huge family conflict or especially political conflict. It's like maybe I'm wrong on this.
That's
And so it's scary, but it reflects and demonstrates this huge amount and very high level of dignity for others when you can say that, and even honoring your own dignity by being able to say, I might be wrong.
I like that. So with us, with this group, All Peacemakers Needed, we're very concerned and excited about promoting peace and being peacemakers. So how can the Dignity Index help us be better peacemakers?
Yeah. So, what I have found in my experience with the scale, again, back to something I had said previously, we designed it to score other people's speech.
Hmm.
What we wanted to do was have people learn political speech. If your candidate speaks with contempt all the time, they're probably not going to be able to represent you very well, because they're not going to be able to solve problems because they hate the other side. And how do get together and pass legislation or debate with people that you hate? It just is not it's not a winning strategy. So to become a peacemaker, we thought, well, if we can teach people that language so that they can begin to support people that want to solve problems, that want to ease division. And then we learned that when we started to teach people to score, they started to turn the scale on themselves
Uh-huh.
and say, well, actually, I think that's me. And I don't want to dismiss the power of recognizing the language, because all of a sudden, I don't want to listen to podcasts anymore that use contempt all the time. I don't like watching TV shows that use contempt. I don't like listening to politicians who use contempt, because I know that they are not promoting peace and helping us come together as a country. So you do apply it outward in what you support and who you support. But more importantly, you start to reflect on your own language and your own interactions with others and say, there's probably a better way for me to say that. When my husband and I have a disagreement, there's probably a better way for me to say, let's talk about this. I might be wrong, but this is what I heard you say last night. Instead of saying, I'm going to roll my eyes at you. Dr. John Gottman, who's a very well-known marriage and family therapist, says that contempt comes across often as rolling your eyes at someone. And so, yeah, right. And so when your spouse or, a family member says something and you roll your eyes, that's just a huge sign of contempt. And I catch myself now. I don't roll my eyes very often anymore. And when I do, almost reflexively, it's like, Tami, you're part of the problem. So being able to recognize this language helps you become the peacemaker. It helps you set the tone for a conversation in your home. It helps you set the tone at a school board meeting where you're going to make public comment about something happening in your school district, that maybe it is something that's a very serious issue, but you can make a comment and help bring a resolution without accusing the school board members of malintent, without calling them names, without belittling them, without saying, it's so and so's fault and nobody cares about what happens. When you realize that that's contempt, you don't want to use it because you want
Yeah.
to be part of the peaceful resolution of the daily problems that face us.
Wow. Just kind of going along with that, on the Dignity Index website, it was one of your co-founders, I think, was talking about how the Dignity Index gives us the framework to work on problems,
Hmm.
to attack the problem, not the
Yes,
person.
that's right.
And I thought that was so great because, people, we as people, we know when there's a problem or there's a divide between us, but sometimes it's really hard to know how to bridge that. And
Yeah.
so I thought that was just the neatest thing that, if we focus on the problem, and it's okay
Yes.
for the problem to be a problem, but it's not okay for the person to be a problem.
That's right. That's right. The Tim Shriver, one of my colleagues, will say that when you use contempt in a disagreement or in conflict, you make enemies for your cause. So again, I'm going to use this example because I was on the state school board and I was the PTA president, and I used to make public comment at our local school board meetings, and I was, on the other end getting comment from citizens in our city. And when when you approach an elected official or a representative and start using contempt, you're making enemies for your cause. You're making enemies of the people who you want to help you. And so instead saying, we have a problem. And I know as an elected official, you probably feel the same way that we've got to solve this problem. Let me tell you my perspective on the problem. And, Tim Shriver and my other colleague, Tom Rochert, who was really the lead architect in the structure of the Dignity Index, will talk about that as well. Let's talk about the problems, not people. And some people will say the problems are just so serious that you have to use contempt. I have to hold someone accountable. You're going to be more successful holding someone accountable. Let's say it's someone who has maybe broken the law or is doing some things that aren't ethical. You can still hold them accountable, but do it with dignity. And you'll have more success if you do it with dignity, if you focus on the facts, the decisions, the outcome, the actions people are taking, and lead those back to. Someone told me once that they like to just say they're narrating the facts versus saying you are an evil person. It's like, here are the facts. Here's what's happening.
Yeah.
You're going to have more support and have more success in the problem solving. Another thing I'll add quickly is on our website, we have these cards, they're dignity phrases, and they're ways that they're just things that you can say in conflict. If you get, like for me, if I start to get really worked up about something and I want to attack the problem, not the person, I can say things like, can you tell me more about that? Can you explain that to me? That's fascinating. I need to think about that. Or I think just the opposite. Tell me how you came to that view. And
Okay.
now you're inviting conversation in a way that is focusing on the problem and not the person.
I like that. You're building bridges from the very beginning.
Right.
Yes. All right. So, what other aspects of peacemaking do you feel are important for those who are interested in peacemaking?
I think that one of the aspects that we overlook is the power that we have by changing our own personal habits. I alluded to it a minute ago,
Ooh.
is looking at the social media that we consume, at looking at the podcasts we listen to or the shows we watch. I mean, we are supporting what we call the contempt industrial complex. Like if we're clicking and liking and saving and sharing things that are full of contempt, we're part of the system. And
Like,
that's a personal decision we can make. I shared this example the other day with someone. I, I'll see a funny meme or something on Instagram that is like a 4 on the dignity index or a 3. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to share that. And then I'll come back later. It's like, okay, but this is so funny. I know I shouldn't share this, but my daughter's got to see this. And the minute I click share, I am part of the problem. And it's just so hard to see. But, we see it and then we see it in ourselves. But that's a way that we each individually can be part of the solution. I got an email a couple of years ago from someone who had first learned about the Dignity Index. And she said, that she had received an email. I think it was maybe a fundraising plea from an organization. She said, I received an email from someone, an organization whose work I support. But I emailed them back and said, I don't like the way you vilify public officials. I need you to to download the Dignity Index and change the way you speak about people. And we encourage people to do this with fundraising emails, especially people who are involved in politics. If it's someone that you really like, if it's your senator or your representative or your council member, but they start using contempt, email them and say, I really like you and I want to support you, but I can't support contempt. I've made a pledge to not do that anymore. So we have the ability to make a lot of decisions and take personal actions, which may seem small. But think about in my community, if 1,000 people emailed a local representative, that is a ton of people.
That's huge.
If 10 people, if 50 people emailed, a congressman, that's a lot of people with the same message saying, I took a pledge to use more dignity and I can't support you. I want to, but I need you to use less contempt and more dignity in your speech. It makes a big difference.
That that would change the whole world right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so just to wrap up, we are so grateful for your time. And I just want to put in a plug for the Dignity Index website. There are so many tools and resources there, and just many things to keep learning about the dignity scale. But we would love to hear anything else that you would like to share or that you feel like we didn't touch on enough. It's kind of open to you.
Sure. I'm going to tell you two things. First of all, thank you for talking about the website dignity.us, 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 together, us. Go to the website, and there's a spot at the top on the top menu called About. I think it's the latest. Anyway, it's our newsletter. So click on news, and we do a weekly newsletter. And I talked about this very thing in the newsletter last week. My colleagues Tim and Tom and I take turns writing. And so it was my turn last week. I usually talk about things related to politics, although this is now being broadly applied in public ed and higher ed and in business and in community work. And now faith groups are coming to us asking about how to use the Dignity Index. But if you click on the newsletter last week, I have some of those suggestions of how people can be involved. So please visit the website. Please sign up for the newsletter.
I've
Of
already signed
course,
up for the newsletter.
you can always cancel later, but you're not going to want to because we're reporting on the dignity movement. This is a movement, and we want you to be part of the dignity movement. We want you to be part of the peacemaking movement. Second thing I'll say, just in closing, is when we first got on the call, and every time I see this theme about peacemaking, I think of a song that I sang when I sang in the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, formerly known as the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. I sang in the choir for 7 years, and one of my favorite songs that we sang was "Let There Be Peace on Earth." Sorry, I get a little emotional. And let it begin with me. And that's really the message. I can score and judge other people all day long, but until I reflect on myself, that's where the peacemaking begins, is let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. And that's the message I'd like to leave.
That's huge. We have control over ourselves, and that's all.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you so much for those words and for your expertise and for all the work you're doing to promote dignity and peace in the world.
Thank you for being part of the movement.
Thank you. Take care.